The colony's main hub was a stark contrast to the desolate outpost and harsh Martian wastelands. Its domed structures glinted under the artificial sunlight, bustling with the hum of machinery and the activity of its residents. Cassandra was rushed to the medical center the moment Elaine's ship docked. Michael stayed by her side, holding her hand as the medics worked. Elaine watched from the doorway, her arms crossed, her expression unreadable. Cassandra's injuries were severe, but the medics assured her she would survive. However, the damage to her spine was irreversible. She would never walk again. The news hit her like a sledgehammer, but she swallowed her despair, her mind already racing with questions. What could she still do? How could she adapt? And most importantly, what could she create? Days turned into weeks. Cassandra's recovery was slow but steady, thanks to the colony's advanced medical technology. Michael visited her every day, bringing updates, jokes, and encouragement. Elaine, too, became a frequent visitor, often surprising Cassandra with her pragmatic wisdom. "You've got two choices," Elaine said one afternoon, sitting at Cassandra's bedside. "Let this define you or redefine yourself. Trust me, the second option's better." Cassandra nodded thoughtfully. "I've been thinking about building something. Not just for me, but for others. Something that could help people like us." Elaine's brow arched. "People like us?" "People who've been told they're broken," Cassandra said, her voice steady. "People who've been left behind because someone decided they weren't worth saving." Elaine's lips curled into a rare smile. "Now you're talking." Within months, Cassandra had designed a prototype, a sleek, modular exoskeleton that could provide mobility and support for people with disabilities. The design was inspired by the hover platform she and Michael had built during their ordeal, but refined and powered by cutting-edge Martian tech. She called it Ascend, a name that reflected her determination to rise above her challenges. The prototype was a triumph, allowing Cassandra to stand and move with ease for the first time since the accident. But it wasn't just about her. Ascend was a beacon of hope for anyone who had been told they couldn't do something. Elaine, inspired by Cassandra's determination, offered to help refine the exoskeleton's design. With her experience and connections, she secured resources and funding, convincing the colony leadership to support the project. Even the commander, who had once dismissed Cassandra and Michael's rescue as too risky, was impressed by the potential impact of Ascend. Michael became the project's logistics manager, ensuring Cassandra and Elaine had everything they needed. Though he often joked about being the least genius of the group, his unwavering support and sharp organizational skills were indispensable. The first public demonstration of Ascend was held in the colony's central plaza. Hundreds of residents gathered, including engineers, scientists, and even children, all eager to witness the unveiling. Cassandra, wearing the exoskeleton, stood at the center of the stage, her heart pounding. "Good afternoon," she began, her voice amplified through the plaza's speakers. "A year ago, I was left for dead because I couldn't use my legs. Today, I stand before you, not just because of technology, but because of the people who refuse to give up on me." She paused, her gaze sweeping the crowd. "Ascend isn't just for me. It's for anyone who's been told they can't. It's proof that innovation isn't just about machines, it's about humanity. About helping each other rise above." The crowd erupted into applause. Tears glistened in the eyes of many, including Michael and Elaine, who stood nearby, beaming with pride. In the months that followed, Ascend became more than just a tool, it became a movement. Cassandra's designs were adapted for various needs, from aiding disabled workers to enhancing the efficiency of colonists in harsh environments. Her story spread across Mars and even reached Earth, inspiring countless people to rethink what was possible. Elaine found a renewed sense of purpose, working as Cassandra's partner in pushing the boundaries of what technology could do for those with disabilities. Her own prosthetics became a model for new innovations, proving that limitations could become strengths. Michael, ever the anchor of the team, continued to support their efforts, reminding everyone to celebrate their victories, no matter how small. One evening, as the three sat together in the colony's observation deck, looking out at the Martian landscape, Cassandra spoke softly. "You know, I used to think that losing my legs was the end," she said. "But now, I realize it was just the beginning." Michael smiled. "It's not about what we lose, Cass. It's about what we build after." Elaine raised a glass of recycled water, a smirk on her face. "To new beginnings." They clinked their glasses together, the red expanse of Mars stretching endlessly beyond the glass. It wasn't just a new beginning for them, it was a new chapter for humanity. A chapter where no one was left behind. The soft hum of the shuttle engines filled the awkward silence between Lucas and Alara as they left the Zalari homeworld behind. The cabin's ambient lighting bathed them both in a neutral glow, but the tension between them was anything but calm. Alara sat stiffly in her chair, her silver eyes scanning the control panel with muted disdain. She hadn't spoken a word since they'd boarded, but her bioluminescent tattoos pulsed faintly, betraying her agitation. Lucas tried to focus on the navigation console, but the weight of her presence was impossible to ignore. "Do you need anything?" he finally asked, breaking the silence. Alara's gaze snapped to him, sharp and unyielding. "Need?" she repeated, her tone laced with sarcasm. "What would I possibly need, human? A collar? Chains to match the ones already on me?" Lucas winced. "I'm trying to help." "Help," she said, her voice rising. "You took me from my world. From my people. From everything I know. And you call this help?" "I didn't take you," Lucas shot back, frustration seeping into his voice. "I didn't ask for any of this. I don't want you as a slave, Alara." "I want to dash to what?" she interrupted, standing now, her glowing tattoos flaring like a firestorm. "Free me? Fix me? Pretend you're a savior in this twisted game your Federation plays?" Lucas stood too, his own temper flaring. "I don't know what I want yet, okay? But I know I'm not going to treat you like property. You don't have to believe me, but at least give me a chance to prove it." Alara stared at him, her chest rising and falling as if she were struggling to rein in her anger. The tattoos on her arms dimmed slightly, their glow subsiding to a steady pulse. After a long pause, she sank back into her seat, crossing her arms. "You don't understand anything about me," she muttered. "Then help me understand," Lucas said, his voice softer now. "Start with why you were punished. What did you do that was so terrible?" Alara hesitated, her silver eyes narrowing as she considered him. Finally, she spoke, her voice quieter but no less sharp. "I questioned the Council's laws. Their so-called unity comes at the cost of individuality, creativity, freedom. I wanted to make them see that. Instead, they made an example of me." Lucas frowned, intrigued despite himself. "You spoke out against your leaders? That's brave." "It was foolish," she corrected. "And it cost me everything." Her gaze drifted toward the shuttle's viewport, where the stars stretched into endless ribbons of light as they entered hyperspace. For a moment, Lucas saw something vulnerable beneath her defiance, a flicker of grief she couldn't fully conceal. "You're not wrong," Lucas said quietly. "About me not understanding you. But I want to try. Tell me more about your people. Your world." Alara glanced at him, suspicion still evident in her expression, but she answered nonetheless. "Zalari is a world of light and sound. Our cities float above crystalline oceans that sing when the wind passes over them. Our forests glow with bioluminescent flora that respond to thought and touch. Everything is connected." Lucas leaned forward, captivated. "That sounds incredible." "It was," Alara said, her voice tinged with sadness. "Until the Council began to suppress those connections. They feared individuality would lead to chaos, so they created laws to enforce conformity. Those who resist disappear. A chill ran down Lucas's spine. And you resisted? Elara nodded. I couldn't stay silent while they destroyed everything that made us who we are. But now I wonder if it was worth it. Lucas shook his head. It was. You stood up for what you believed in. That matters. She studied him for a long moment, as if trying to gauge the sincerity of his words. Finally, she said, we'll see if your actions match your words, Earthman. The rest of the journey passed in uneasy silence, but the ice between them had begun to thaw. By the time they reached Lucas's station on the edge of Earth territory, Elara was no longer avoiding his gaze, though her guarded demeanor remained firmly in place. Lucas gave her a room in his modest quarters, outfitted with comforts she might appreciate: a hollow window displaying Zolari-like landscapes, a replicator programmed with Zolari cuisine, and even a patch of bioluminescent plants he'd acquired from a trade mission. She studied the setup with a mixture of skepticism and surprise. You went through all this trouble for me, she asked, her tone neutral but her glowing tattoos betraying a hint of curiosity. It wasn't trouble, Lucas said with a shrug. I just thought you might like something familiar. Elara didn't respond immediately, but her gaze softened ever so slightly. It's a start. Over the coming days, their interactions became less tense. Elara's initial hostility began to wane as Lucas treated her not as a servant, but as an equal. They shared meals, exchanged stories, and debated everything from philosophy to interstellar politics. One night, as they stood on the observation deck watching a meteor shower streak across the void, Elara turned to him. Why are you doing this? She asked. Lucas met her gaze. Because it's the right thing to do. And because I think you deserve better. For the first time, Elara smiled, just a small, fleeting curve of her lips, but it was enough to light the darkness around them. You're an odd human, she said softly. Lucas chuckled. I'll take that as a compliment. As the meteors burned across the sky, the barriers between them began to crumble, and an understanding grew that neither of them had expected or entirely trusted yet. AI Spurs. The Federation station Aegis loomed against the backdrop of a dying red star, its metallic hull glinting like a blade in the vastness of space. For weeks, Lucas and Elara had lived on the station, their uneasy alliance transforming into a tenuous friendship. Yet, as their bond deepened, Lucas knew they could no longer ignore the growing storm brewing outside the station's walls or within their own hearts. Elara was no longer a stranger to the station's corridors or its bustling community. Her natural intelligence and charisma drew the interest of others, even if her Zolari heritage made her an oddity. Engineers admired her insights into biosynthetic systems, while researchers marveled at her stories of Zolari flora and fauna. Slowly but surely, she began to make her presence felt. But not everyone welcomed her. Whispers of her servitude spread among the Federation elite, and Lucas found himself under increasing scrutiny. Reynard, barked Ambassador Klein one afternoon as Lucas exited the station's arboretum. The ambassador, an older man with a face like weathered stone, strode toward him with a data pad clutched tightly in his hand. I've been hearing unsettling things about your Zolari, guest. Lucas stiffened. Elara isn't a guest. She's under my care, and her servitude is a punishment imposed by the Zolari Council, not something I endorse. That's the problem, Klein snapped. You're supposed to uphold Federation protocols, not question them. The Zolari are allies, and their customs demand respect. You're walking a dangerous line. Lucas felt his anger rise, but kept his tone calm. Respecting customs doesn't mean condoning injustice. Elara doesn't deserve this. No one does. Klein's eyes narrowed. Be careful, Reynard. Diplomacy is about compromise, not crusades. As Klein stormed off, Lucas knew he couldn't keep avoiding the inevitable. If he wanted to secure Elara's freedom, he would have to challenge the system, one that prized stability over morality. It was a battle he wasn't sure he could win, but the alternative was unthinkable. That evening, Lucas found Elara in the observation deck, gazing out at the red star as its fiery tendrils licked the edges of the void. Her bioluminescent tattoos glowed faintly in the dim light, matching the somber tone of the scene. "You're brooding again," Lucas said, leaning against the railing beside her. "I have much to brood about," Alara replied, her voice quiet. "I've been listening to your people. Their fear of upsetting the Zalari Council is palpable. They don't want to lose the Alliance," Lucas admitted. "The Zalari supply critical technology to the Federation. That's why they're so hesitant to question anything." "And you?" she asked, turning to him. "Are you afraid to question them?" Lucas hesitated, then shook his head. "I'm afraid of what happens if no one does." Alara's gaze softened. "That's unexpectedly noble. Dangerous, but noble." "I'll take dangerous over complacent any day," Lucas said with a grin. "But I need your help." Her eyebrows arched. "You want me to assist in my own rebellion?" "It's not just your rebellion," Lucas said, his tone serious now. "What the Zalari Council did to you isn't just about one person. If we can challenge this, we might change things for others like you on Zalaris Prime and beyond." Alara considered his words carefully. "And what's your plan, Earthman?" Lucas leaned closer, his voice low. "We go public. The Federation has laws about sentient rights. If we can make your story known, we might force their hand. But it's a gamble. The Zalari won't like it." Alara smiled faintly, a mischievous glint in her eyes. "I've never been one to shy away from a gamble." The next few days were a blur of covert meetings, encrypted messages, and carefully orchestrated leaks. With the help of sympathetic contacts within the Federation, Lucas and Alara arranged for her story to be broadcast across the interstellar network. The reaction was swift and explosive. News outlets across the galaxy picked up the story, painting Alara as a symbol of resistance and highlighting the Federation's complicity in upholding oppressive practices. Protesters rallied on dozens of planets, calling for an end to servitude and a re-evaluation of alliances with species that condoned such laws. But the backlash was just as fierce. The Zalari Council issued a formal complaint, demanding Alara's immediate return and accusing Lucas of violating diplomatic protocols. Threats against Lucas poured in from both Zalari loyalists and Federation hardliners, forcing him to remain within the station's secure zones. Despite the chaos, Lucas and Alara found solace in each other's company. Their shared struggle had forged a bond neither of them had expected, one that went beyond friendship or obligation. One evening, as they reviewed the latest developments in Lucas's quarters, Alara spoke what had been on both their minds. "You've risked everything for me," she said, her voice soft but firm. "Your career, your safety, even your life. Why?" Lucas hesitated, then met her gaze. "Because you matter, Alara. Not just what you stand for or what we're fighting for you. I can't stand by and let them take away your freedom, your voice, your light." Alara's silver eyes shimmered, and for the first time, her guarded expression melted entirely. She reached out, her fingers brushing his. "You're a fool, Lucas Reynard," she said, a small smile playing on her lips. "But you're my fool." As the protests reached their peak, the Federation Council convened an emergency session to address the crisis. Lucas and Alara were summoned to testify, their words carrying the hopes of countless beings across the galaxy. The Zalari representatives, led by High Magistrate Volrix, fought tooth and nail to maintain their laws, but the tide of public opinion had shifted. Lucas's voice trembled as he delivered his final statement. "Alara is not just a symbol or a victim. She's a person, a brilliant, courageous person who deserves the same rights as anyone else. If the Federation truly stands for justice, it cannot turn a blind eye to this." When Alara spoke, her voice rang with unshakable conviction. "My people's light has been dimmed for too long. But together, we can ignite a flame that no council, no law, can extinguish." The chamber erupted in applause, and for the first time, Lucas felt hope bloom in his chest. The battle was far from over, but together they had taken the first steps toward a brighter future, one where freedom and love might triumph over fear and oppression. The Federation Council chamber was packed to capacity. Delegates from dozens of species filled the vast hall, their murmurs echoing off the arched ceilings. The air buzzed with tension as Lucas and Alara entered the chamber, flanked by a contingent of supporters who had rallied to their cause. Cameras floated above the crowd, broadcasting the proceedings live to billions across the galaxy. This was the moment everything had led to the final vote on whether the Federation would enact sweeping reforms to abolish servitude and pressure allied governments, including the Zolari Council, to do the same. Alara, dressed in flowing silver robes that mirrored the bioluminescent glow of her tattoos, walked with quiet dignity beside Lucas. She had become a symbol of hope for many and a threat to others. Lucas could feel the weight of her presence, the gravity she commanded simply by standing tall against centuries of oppression. As they reached the podium, the Federation speaker signaled for silence. "We call upon Lucas Reynard of Earth and Alara of Zolaris Prime to deliver their closing statements." Lucas stepped forward, his heart pounding. He had rehearsed his words 100 times, but the magnitude of the moment still threatened to overwhelm him. He glanced at Alara, who gave him a slight nod, her silver eyes steady and unwavering. Drawing strength from her, he began. "Esteemed delegates, we stand here today not just for Alara, but for all who have been silenced, oppressed, and forgotten. The Federation was founded on the principles of unity and justice, yet we have allowed these principles to be compromised in the name of diplomacy and convenience. If we are to call ourselves a beacon of hope, we must hold ourselves to a higher standard." He paused, letting the words sink in before continuing. "This is not just a fight for one person or one planet. This is a fight for the soul of our galaxy. If we turn a blind eye to injustice, we betray not only those who suffer under it, but also ourselves." Lucas stepped back, his speech met with scattered applause and murmurs of agreement. Then Alara stepped forward, her bioluminescent tattoos flaring brighter as she addressed the assembly. "I was born into a world of light," she began, her voice carrying a calm yet commanding strength. "A world where every being is connected by the glow of our essence. But my people's light has been dimmed by fear, conformity, and control. I stand here today not as a victim but as a survivor. My story is not unique. There are countless others who have been silenced, their lights snuffed out before they had a chance to shine." She raised her arms, her tattoos illuminating her face and casting a glow across the chamber. "But we are more than the shadows of our past. Together, we can create a galaxy where every light is allowed to burn bright. Where no being is forced to dim themselves for the sake of another's comfort or power." The hall fell silent, the weight of her words pressing on every soul present. Slowly, the applause began, first a smattering of claps, then a growing wave of cheers and chants. Even some of the Zolari delegates, seated stiffly at the far end of the chamber, could not hide their awe. The speaker rose, calling for order. "The motion to abolish servitude and pressure all Federation member states to adopt sentient rights reforms is now before us. Delegates, cast your votes." The vote was tense, the seconds stretching into eternity as the results were tabulated. Finally, the speaker spoke. "The motion passes, 82% in favor." Cheers erupted across the chamber. Lucas felt a weight lift from his chest as he turned to Alara, who met his gaze with a radiant smile. The reforms were only the beginning, but it was a monumental step forward. The celebrations that followed were unlike anything Lucas had ever experienced. Across the galaxy, beings from every corner of the Federation rejoiced. On Zolaris Prime, hidden dissidents lit up the night sky with displays of bioluminescent art, a silent yet powerful message to their oppressors. For Lucas and Alara, the victory was bittersweet. The Zolari Council had grudgingly agreed to begin dismantling their system of servitude, but it would take years, perhaps decades, to undo the damage. Still, they had lit a spark that could not be extinguished. It was during one of these celebrations, in the Arboretum of Federation Station Aegis, that Lucas found Alara gazing at the stars. The soft glow of bioluminescent plants surrounded her, casting her in an ethereal light. "You did it," he said, approaching her. "We did it," she corrected, turning to face him. "I couldn't have done this without you, Lucas." He smiled. "You give me too much credit." Alara stepped closer, her expression softening. "And you don't give yourself enough. You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. You risked everything for me. That's not something I'll ever forget." Lucas's throat tightened as he searched for the right words. "I didn't do it out of duty, Alara. I did it because I care about you. More than I ever thought possible." Her glowing tattoos pulsed softly, mirroring the warmth in her silver eyes. "I know," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "And I care about you too." In that moment, the distance between them, the cultural divides, the political turmoil, the differences in species and upbringing vanished. Lucas reached out, and Alara met him halfway, their hands intertwining. Their union became a symbol of the change sweeping the galaxy. They married in a ceremony that blended the traditions of Earth and Zolaris Prime. Delegates, dignitaries, and ordinary citizens from across the stars attended, each bringing with them hopes for a future defined by unity and understanding. As Lucas and Alara exchanged vows beneath a canopy of glowing flowers, the galaxy watched. Their story, once marked by servitude and injustice, had transformed into a tale of love, resilience, and the unshakable belief that even the smallest light could illuminate the darkest corners of the universe. And as they kissed, the stars seemed to shine just a little brighter.